Hi, I'm Nafiya of First MA. Here I'm going to present my seminar for Literary Theory and Criticism on the topic Modernism and Postmodernism. So getting some ideas about modernism will make the understanding of postmodernism easier. First, modernism. Modernism is both a philosophical movement and an art movement that, along with cultural trends and changes, arose from wide-scale and far-reaching transformations in Western society during the late 19th and the early 20th centuries. That is around or during 1910. And coming to postmodernism is at once a continuation of modernism and also a breakaway from the modernist stand. Now, among the factors that shaped modernism were the development of modern industrial societies and the rapid growth of cities, and followed then by reactions to the horrors of this First World War. And postmodernism is a reaction to the horrors of the Second World War. And modernism starts from 1910 to 1945, and postmodernism starts after Second World War to present. And one of the key features of modernism was its emphasis on the fragmented forms. So why writers like T.S. Eliot, Matthew Arnold, James Joyce were talking about fragmented world, absence of faith, insecurities, disorientation, decenteredness? What led to them? What led to modernism? If we look into the socio-economic condition of European countries during 1910, we know what led to this fragmentation or what led to modernism. That time, around 1900s, people unanimously believed that they are left with no pillars of faith. So human beings, to lead a normal or a healthier life, we have something to rely on. That may be whatever, that may change or vary according to the individual, but we want something to rely on. So that only we can lead a normal or a healthier life. And during that time, people unanimously believed that they are left with no pillars of faith. So let's see which were the pillars of faith and how humans stopped to believe that. And Matthew Arnold wrote a poem, Dover Beach, in 1867. In that he said, "Sea of faith has dried out." And in that poem, he laments about the people's loss of faith in religion. So what led to that loss? What is the reason behind that loss of faith in religion? So first one is God. Of course, we people, everyone or majority of us rely on God or have faith in God. And during Victorian period came Charles Darwin's Origin of Species, published in 1859. And of course, we know that book states that we are all evolved because of natural mechanism. We all evolved from monkeys. And so far, people believe that they were created by God. But this work shattered their faith on God by stating the idea that we all evolved because of natural mechanism. So this work shattered people's faith on God. And another important philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, said God is dead when he saw the rampant materialism. So next to God is king. And great philosophers like Aristotle's Poetics and other philosophers' book find that, and they said God has appointed king to rule on his behalf. And people also believe that God has appointed king to rule on his behalf, and they considered king next to God, and they blindly worship king. And then Karl Marx, a German philosopher, came with his Communist Manifesto in 1848. It talks about the class conflict. He said there should be no private property, no private ownership of goods, only there should be public property. And this concept shattered people's faith on king. And then third one is individual or human mind. In 1899, Sigmund Freud, an Austrian psychoanalysis, came with his interpretation of dreams. In that, he talked about the model of consciousness. He said consciousness is structured like an iceberg. We can only see 10%, that is our conscious level. The rest is our subconscious and unconscious mind. And also says that all our actions depend on that 10%. Remaining 90%, we have no control over it. So this concept or this idea shattered people's faith on human mind, because all our actions are based on that 10% and remaining 90%. The majority of we have no control over our 90% of mind. So this work shattered people's faith on themselves or human mind. And the fourth one is democracy. So First World War started from 1914 to 1918. So that war spread across all over the world, and people witnessed widespread bloodshed. And that war, First World War, fought in the name of democracy, came up with no no result. So people's faith in democracy was questioned. People believe that the war is fought in the name of democracy, but it came up with no result. So this war shattered people's faith in democracy. And the fifth one is science. During the First World War, people witnessed what bad science can do, and atomic bombs were created. It destroyed an entire city. And during First World War, people see the negative impact of science. So these atomic bombs, or during the First World War, people witnessed negative impacts of science, and their faith on science was so lost. So all these things led to modernism, and there is nothing which they can rely and get out of problems, and search of solution became the theme. And gradually all European nations started to lose their colony after the First World War, and all European nations became the countries of multi-ethnicity, and this contradiction of multi-ethnicity came into being. And in postmodern world, or in postmodern literature, writers stopped looking for solution. There is no search of solution. So in modernism, they searched for solution. In postmodernism, they stopped looking for solutions. And apart from that, a great modernist thinker like Jean Baudrillard, French philosopher, he is best known for his analysis of media, contemporary culture and technological communication. He came up with his new theory, hyperreality, and his work, Jean Baudrillard's work, Simulacra and Simulation, that he talks about two important things, simulacra and hyperreality. So simulacra is false copy, or whose original doesn't exist. It's a false copy. And hyperreality is you can't tell the difference between what is real and what is the simulation or the imitation of real. And his work, The Gulf War Didn't Take Place, published in the year 1991, in that he says that the Gulf War didn't exist. It's a hyperreality. Hyperreality is like, for example, cartoon characters like Mickey Mouse, Minions, Disney movies, all those characters won't exist, but we enjoy that as if they were real. So that is hyper-real. So he said that the Gulf War didn't take place. It's a hyper-reality. Contradictions are embraced in postmodernism. In other postmodernist writers like Julia Kristeva, she's a Bulgarian French philosopher, her work Intertextuality, and Jean-Francois Lyotard, the important postmodernist writers. And coming to the features of this modernism and postmodernism. In literature, modernism gave way to a blurring of distinction between genres. Sometimes two or more genres or artistic categories were deliberately fused to form hybrid art, or one genre imbibed the qualities of another. And Virginia Woolf's stream of consciousness technique and the concept of right and wrong and injustice are highly blurred here. And T.S. Eliot and E. Cummings wrote poetry that was considered closer to prose than verse. The prose styles of Virginia Woolf and James Joyce acquired poetic qualities. The fragmented nature of such works will serve as an alienating device, urging the readers to think beyond the text, out of the box. Both schools, both modernism and postmodernism, reject the rigid boundaries between high and low art. Postmodernism even goes a step further, and it deliberately mixes the low art with high art. Postmodernism used light-hearted parody, which was also used by modernism. Both modernism and postmodernism employed pastiche. Pastiche means imitation of another style. Parody and pastiche serve to remind the reader that the work is not real but fictional and constructed. Those works were fragmented and don't easily or directly convey a solid meaning to the readers. Modernism projects the fragmentation or fragmented world, insecurities, disorientation, absence of faith, decenteredness of contemporary world as tragic. But postmodernism projects that as no longer tragic. Because of the pillars of faith shaken, modernism came into being, and because the situation got worse, postmodernism came into being. Thank you.